Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy pseudo Friday.
Friday-ish, yeah. Full transparency, we're recording a little earlier than on Friday, but we still welcome you all to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation, and yeah, we are going to talk a little bit about innovation, aren't we, Ben? A bit later. Are we? Aren't we just?
And then some.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Let me start with a bit of news as always. So this is hot in. Now, you know, we've talked in the past, Ben, about three-letter acronyms and the addiction that this market and industry's got with just putting three letters in brackets after three words to try and make them, I don't know, more important. I don't know what they are. But anyway, I've got a good one here. I'll make it a bit bigger so people can see it. This has come through on the Blueprint 2 January newsletter. Events, key updates, and new partnerships. Market readiness, update on the Digital Processing Services Agreement, which is the DPSA, Ben.
Right.
Now then, for those of you that didn't know,
that long term.
Yeah, the DPSA. Now, what you need to do is have a single point of contact, which is now called the SPOC, SPOC. And as you can see there, you've got to provide details of your DPSA SPOC by clicking here.
I'm the DPSA Spock. I want to be a Spock.
I want to be a Spock.
I've never. I mean, it beggars belief, that bit of. I wonder what else they've done if they've done that with such a simple thing.
I don't know.
Agreement and a contact, basically. So we've got an agreement and a contact, and could you get on with letting us know? And you have created what I think is one of the most convoluted emails I've ever seen. There is a phrase in the middle here that we are at the point where we will be releasing the DPSA imminently. And without confirmation of your DPSA SPOC or DPSA DPSA SPOC details, you will miss out on the release of the contract materials. Now, honestly, you do lose the will to live in the middle of that sentence because you are so thrown by the incredibly appalling grammar.
Yeah.
Honestly, that whole email could have been written in one sentence. It's talk about plain English not being applied.
Yeah. We did.
That is only saying, right, be a contact for our agreement, our services agreement.
Yeah.
There's nothing complicated in there. There's nothing innovative isn't that going to put people off, all that stuff?
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got to read it, decode it, decipher it, and then decide whether it's you that needs to click that button. Yeah.
What happens when they get something complicated they've got to explain?
I don't know. Must get really complicated. Anyway, we thought we'd find some Spock quotes because that's what we like to do, isn't it? And this was our favorite. Computers make excellent and efficient servants, but I have no wish to serve under them. Brilliant stuff. Live long and prosper.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Whoever wrote that should be shot. There's no question. It's not even a subjective argument. It's the sort of stuff you used to get when the Plain English Society was started.
Yeah, indeed.
It's fantastic. I want to see more of that stuff.
I can put together a file for you, which maybe I will do.
Somebody got paid to write that.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on. More interesting things. So I appeared on a podcast this week, Ben. Someone else's podcast. They invited me.
God, infidelity,
I know.
promiscuity, treachery.
In fact,
Look at that. That's a lovely logo. It's better than ours.
I know it's a lot better than ours. The whole thing was a lot better than ours.
I know. I have actually watched it.
The only thing that brings it down to our level is me being on it.
No, you did a good job, mate. I thought you were very good.
Thanks.
Yeah, you were.
Thank you very much. It's I'll put the link in the episode when this goes out, and people watch if they want to. It's quite an interesting chat. We talked about technology change, a bit of a preview of TinTech, and we got into some quite interesting areas. But I'll let you lot decide that.
I thought it was good. It was interesting. It was good. It was quite kind of trendy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. They were very trendy. Yeah, I wasn't. Okay, good. Let's move on. So last week we talked about Amazon pulling out of insurance, and we just talked a little bit about it. And you found this follow-up article, which is really interesting and actually opens up a whole kind of area of discussion and debate about how innovation and particularly technology-led innovation and change can often be overhyped and overblown, and sometimes can take a lot longer than normal. But let's start off with this kind of article that you saw, Ben, which is pretty interesting.
Well, it caught my attention, obviously, because we were talking about it last week, and it's been in the news. What to learn from Amazon Stadia. And I have to say, Rory Yates, who wrote this in Insurance Thought Leadership, it's a really, really good article. It synthesizes a number of arguments, and it doesn't just come from a technological point of view or an insurance point of view. He kind of goes for more of a what's going on point of view, strategy, I suppose, strategic view. And it's very, very good. So basically, his argument in a nutshell, this may not be a nutshell by the time I finish, but it's supposed to be, that it's an ecosystem that companies like Amazon and big technology companies run effectively an ecosystem. So you could think of Google, or you could think of Amazon, or you could think of Apple and its App Store and things like that. They run a whole ecosystem that fundamentally is designed to meet a whole cornucopia of customer needs, not just sell them a product, right? So it kind of anticipates those needs, and it uses data extremely efficiently to do that. And Amazon's, USP is basically to deliver. It's a logistics company. It delivers everything everywhere very quickly. And so that's all kind of fine. And yet Amazon kind of went into this almost not as using its ecosystem, but using kind of on a product basis, almost on the premise that insurance was low trust and low knowledge on the part of the consumers. So that if you set up a proposition that was, here's a trusted brand doing insurance and quite good at explaining things and other stuff, then you'll buy it. Of course, that didn't happen, and they've in inverted commas pulled out. So that was the thing. So he then goes on to talk quite interestingly about ecosystems and stuff, but then compares it to insurance and says the issue with insurance, and I think we know this, but it's interesting in the context of this, is that really if you build an industry around products or policies in the insurance industry's case, and a number of things that are sold along this kind of value chain, if you like, by brokers, insurers, others, you just create a load of silos. And each of those silos has a bit of data, but really, fundamentally, they don't work collectively, and they can't work to create this ecosystem that would anticipate customers' needs. And he rightly says that, of course, if you could do this, or any insurer could do this, it would be an amazing business, because in fact, what you do is you kind of connect insurance into people's lives. It wouldn't just be a great purchase every year renewal type thing. You'd be saying, we'll anticipate the risks you've got, we'll adjust them. People try and do this with individual products, but it's not quite the same as the ecosystem. And you would therefore have a much, much bigger industry with much more value being delivered. And I think that's true, one. And I think it's a kind of perceptive and really well articulated article. And what he also says is, which we did say last week, which is, but let me be clear, Amazon isn't out of insurance. He says what we said. They've learned, they've understood. It hasn't worked for them in the product sense. But what if they came in the ecosystem sense? What if they started to think about it that way? Or Google or anybody? And that has, that makes me think quite differently in a sense about what they could do, because, if they put their minds or their ecosystems to it, they could do something pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So that was, I thought it was a really good article. He's saying it's not the end of the story. It's the kind of testing out of things. They will have learned a lot from this. They're not just going to lose the investment and just carry on to do something else. And also, I think he's right to say that there's a lot of people in insurance who kind of chortling about this, saying, "Oh yeah, nobody understands insurance because it's different and it's that and the other." It's not that at all. It's just that they decided to go in a particular place that was probably more cost effective, they thought, and if they're going to do it, they probably have to go in big time.
Yeah. And that, yes, and you're right. That is what we were talking about last week. And this kind of brought us on to the topic of kind of the latest phase of kind of technology hype, which is AI and generative AI. Yeah. And this is a really interesting article that you saw, which is related a short history of tractors in English.
Yeah.
And I don't know why you need that in English bit, but anyway.
I don't know why it's in English either. So it's what the tractor and the horse tell you about generative AI. Okay, so this is another in a nutshell argument that isn't in a nutshell.
Okay.
So there's two things, one of which we have discussed earlier this week, but not on the show, which is that Sam Altman and Satya Nadella were on a podcast, I think, or a show talking about 2024 being a big year for AI and what it really means. And they touched on a number of topics, but I think the main theme from both of them was what they called the magic of AI is the generality. In other words, it's kind of like like the oil, if you like, of business, or it can be applied in all sorts of different ways. This stuff that's called AI, and they are also saying, sort of separately, that artificial general intelligence, AGI, where computers outperform humans in intellectual tasks, Altman says it's pretty near. Satya Nadella kind of goes along a bit with that, but not quite as far. So, that's kind of just the way that technologists talk, I think. And Altman makes an interesting comment. Technological prosperity is the most important ingredient to a better future. So he's saying technology is central to this. So I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Let's have a look at this. And so I obviously didn't write this article, but this is kind of almost the same thing that The Economist is doing, certainly rather better than I could. But they're talking about tractors and the development of tractors. So tractors were revolutionary over the last 125 years or whatever, in changing the whole of the agricultural sector and a lot of others as well as of course very useful for protesting in France.
Very useful. Maybe that's why they put in English. So
maybe in the short history of tractors in France.
In France, yes. So just park them on your motorway.
Exactly. Yeah. So just so quickly, so tractors sort of came about in the early part of the 20th century, and they were at the same time, rather like AI, seen as being both a threat and an opportunity. And there was kind of fear and glee in equal measure as these tractors came in. And just to say, by the way, that Goldman Sachs says that AI will increase GDP in the world by 7%. Okay, so this is the kind of statement that this AI is transformational, and this is why they're testing this against tractors. So the first point to make to keep it simple, is that over a period of time, actually quite a long period of time, tractors probably did, and their associated technologies did probably create about 8% of increase in GDP in the world. So they were hugely influential and changed almost, everything about agriculture and so on. So they were very important. But the point here is that actually it was very slow. And the tractors, didn't reduce. They did reduce the number of workers in the end by about 25%. But early on, the tractors were pretty clunky. That was the first thing. But also there were other factors at play, so which kind of delayed things. So decisions to do things were delayed. So there was, for example, a surfeit of workers before the Second World War. And so horses were held on to actually much longer than people might have thought. They were still used because they were, they weren't a big capital investment, and you could hire people relatively cheaply because real wages weren't rising. So that kind of went on for quite a long time. And also, things started to change, but it took about 25 years or so for the technology of the tractor to improve. But by about 1950 or so, they had all sorts of tractors that could work in muddy fields and so on and so forth. Didn't have metal wheels, they had rubber wheels and things like that. So, but over a long period of time, again, certain things were innovations, I suppose, came in. So one of them was John Deere's powerlifting technology. Now, we all see this as normal these days, but, stick on the back of the tractor a thing that can lift a great big hay bale or a, load of fertilizer or whatever. That cut the need for having lots of people paying them to do it and speeded things up enormously. So things like that, and then cotton pickers and corn pickers and I guess combine harvesters and all sorts of things that are related came in. And these did kind of begin to transform. And also at the same time, the prices of these technologies had come down enormously. So, so what is it? Coming back to AI, what does that mean? So another article that I picked up was looking at really saying that if AI is going to be a success or any new technology, you have to invest. Businesses have to invest. They have to adapt their businesses to AI. New factories, new software, new ways of working, new services, even new products. So they have to invest significantly to adapt to this new technology or to make the most of it. Now, short story is that's not happening. CapEx is going down in the world, if anything, rather than going up. And I suspect, because this is just global, that's probably as true in insurance as it is in other sectors. So there isn't really this kind of investment going into technology at all. So that could mean that two things really. Generative AI is a busted flush and no businesses are seeing it's worth it because they aren't at the moment. They're not investing in it to accommodate it. Or, as I've said with the tractors, adoption will take time. And, on balance, you might say, well, it's probably the latter, not the former. So kind of rounding it out, what does it mean for insurance and what are the factors? I think there are some factors in favor of AI, I guess. One is the supposed talent shortage. But I guess that's a complex thing because, it's rather like people, farm workers with horses. I suspect a lot of those farm workers were quite skilled with horses, so they knew, how to work them and all that sort of stuff. And that's probably true of a lot of people in the insurance industry who know how to work with things and make them work. So you don't have to do a massive capital expenditure to risky to get rid of those people. So that's maybe not. That's perhaps a longer term thing that happens. I think the others that we've talked about in the past, I don't think the insurance industry is particularly pro R&D. It doesn't seem to invest as heavily as other industries, other sectors, perhaps in R&D and software and technology. And we've seen it go down actually in financial services, in fintech, because of the economic conditions over the last few years. And because they haven't, a lot of those technological businesses, insurtechs, haven't really delivered any value. So that's fair enough, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think probably the answer is that over time it will change, but we've got to have a significant, AI on its own doesn't do it. You have to have a significant change to the whole of this kind of the world, the ecosystem, everything around it. All these businesses have to adapt to it, and then the thing fits in, like the tractors.
Yeah.
But that's,
do you think,
long.
Yeah, that was a big nut. It must have been a coconut shell.
I don't know what it was. It was enormous. Whatever's bigger than a coconut.
Yeah, bigger than a coconut. But so take your tractor thing. I wonder, one of the other consequences of the tractor was kind of the farming landscape, or the agricultural landscape. So without doing any research at all, but I can imagine that it went from a lot of small holding farmers to kind of an industrial level kind of farms, especially I'm thinking kind of in America. And that, that the technology of the tractor allowed that huge industrialization of food. So that might be
exactly right. Those farms increased in size enormous. The average size of a farm increased enormously. Small farms effectively eradicated. But there were lots of downsides to that as well. So there was all sorts of things that we're dealing with now that are consequences of that, like the erosion of topsoil, the way that intensive farming has affected things. So in a funny way, we're kind of going back on that now and saying, well, let's do less intensive farming, more organic and things like that. So, that again is sort of probably the cautionary side of these things, is that even though they take a long time, it still doesn't mean they're fully right when they come in. It's a double-edged sword to some extent.
Yeah, definitely.
And the damages, the equivalent damages you could see in AI in financial services or insurance are that you lose a lot of important things in the industry that were there before AI came in, and get lost afterwards, and you have to then backtrack somehow to regain it. Yeah.
Or you just lose them to another market that has not developed as fast, or just saw the.
Well, I guess the sort of things, the things that are permanently damaging that regulators would get onto or governments would get onto, which are things like, agricultural depletion or damage globally would be seen as a major problem for climate change. So you would be taken out of the hands of any industry, and sort of now is being put into, pan-governmental things. I think probably, Satya Nadella, I think, says in his argument, he said, as soon as you get any kind of artificial general intelligence, he said, well before that comes in, it will be heavily regulated. Sam Altman doesn't agree with that, but then he's Sam Altman. But I think Nadella's probably right, is that governments are onto this sort of thing, and they will say, look, we can't, wander into this sort of space and just not do anything about it. And it's a much more global regulatory system than I think you had at the turn of the century, for example, with tractors. I think we weren't even aware of climate change, but we are quite well aware of the damages of poorly managed financial markets.
So I'm just going to give a shout out to Phil Middleton, who put on LinkedIn that link to the, I think it was the Economist, wasn't it, podcast at Davos that they were doing. So thanks for that, Phil. I do kind of see, I suppose, I think Phil made the point in his post, this kind of tension, I suppose, between what those technologists on the podcast were talking about, and how the insurance industry by default operates. Before it does anything, it needs to see a business case. It needs to see ROI. It's very cautious in its approach. It's very structured, has guidelines and all this kind of thing, and quite rightly so. But this type of technology might cut through that, and the example is kind of Copilot that comes in with Microsoft 365, and so you have these virtual assistants that kind of come in under the radar, and individuals rather than corporates kind of just decide how to use them. So I think it's quite an interesting time.
I agree, and I think it's right. I think that goes back a bit to the silos, doesn't it? Really, which is that maybe when you think about this argument, a lot of these things happen because you can't do anything cross-industry. You can't say a big insurer is never going to, at the moment, is not going to say, right, we're going to go for an ecosystem type of approach, take over the world. I mean, I know them and you know them. I think they tend to talk about this portfolio of products. That's their kind of stock phrase for how they manage their commerciality. They don't, none of the ones I work with, and I work with quite a lot, are saying we are thinking about a vision of the future where we are delivering risk mitigation services, insurance products in all sorts of ways to fit people as they move around in their normal lives. They're just going to be seamlessly connected to people. There's nobody really talking about that. I mean, technologists talk about that as a possibility for their product, but it's still one product. It's not the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Very interesting ahead of TinTech, isn't it? To kind of test out what people are saying almost against these rules of thumb.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think on Tuesday at the event, I think this will be a massive topic, not just on the agenda, but I think people are kind of feeling their way around it, what it means for the industry, what it means for their organizations and their currently their silos. And whether that changes, I don't know. We'll have to see.
I think perhaps the thing about AI is it applies to, unlike tractors, it applies to all sorts of, a cross-section of industries, maybe some more than others, but it does certainly seem to have a more general application than, say, tractors and agriculture.
Yeah. So a regular feature now, the tractor factor.
Tractor factor. Yeah.
That's what we'll
Well,
have.
I mean, I kind of like a tractor.
I'd love a tractor. I used to drive one. My first job at university, I worked for the council and mainly picking up litter. But one of the things I had to do was paint the lines on the football pitches in Luton, and they had a lot of football pitches. So we also had a tractor that you chain harrowed the pitches with, and man, that was fun.
Right. Yeah.
It was really fun. I love a tractor.
I think they give you a sense of power, don't they?
Yeah. Yes. Good. Right then, let's end this. Right, very good. So yeah, we've mentioned TinTech. That's all good. Yeah, I talked about the results of the pre-event survey a couple of weeks ago, and a lot around AI. So yeah, looking forward to that conversation there. So quickly, Ben, I just wanted to talk to you about service quality accreditation that you have announced this month or this coming month in February, I think it is.
Last week. So yeah, it's been out, or it's just come out in the last few days. So we have, our service quality mark, Grace Church service quality mark came out. So this year we're doing a lot more with it. So it's basically those businesses that we work with or who have achieved a certain level of service performance over a longish period of time. So hence consistency. Will cross a threshold and be offered the award. No, they don't have to take it, but pretty much everybody does. And been a bit of a slow burn because we didn't really foist it on the market. We just said, if you want to use it, use it. But now it's really getting very popular. I think the proof points of accreditation are important to businesses, perhaps more so as regulation comes in that asks for those sort of proof points and for those to be independent. So we've announced 10 businesses in London this month. 10 claims teams in London got it, which is more than we've ever had before, which says something good about the market.
Yeah.
Only 3 actually though in the region, so fewer there. But we've been, pushing it. It's in the press, and it's been. What's interesting is, although of course it's ours and it's Grace Church's, what's interesting is how it's beginning to gather momentum. I think the thing, because this year I think for the first time there was there's quite a few players that get it at the same time, and often insurers might go, well, we're not on our own, we're just with others. Actually, the creativity is almost coming through in the marketing of it. So we had one team, Aegis, which they took all these photos of them sitting in the office with all these placards of the Grace Church quality mark, which, I mean, they hadn't talked to me about it or us about it, but it's fine. I mean, it's fun. And it's showing that, actually people, once they engage with this, start to think of different things. And actually, some businesses have had it for all 9 years that we've been running, or 8 years that we've been running it. And in fact, they started to say, hey, let's put all the things together in a line and then show them, because they wanted to show track record, of course. But
yeah,
they were ahead of us on that, really. So it has a real kind of, sort of momentum and dynamism around it now, which is, I mean, apart from the fact it's kind of useful, I'm talking to some big brokers about it. They use it behind the scenes for business, for proving that you're good at claims. And claims is becoming more important, as we know.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah, I saw it through LinkedIn, social media, people posting about it, not necessarily Grace Church and yourself. So yeah, it's definitely getting through. It's good. It's really good.
No, once they've got it, it's theirs to talk about, and that allows them to talk about what they're good at and why they're different. I think it's not one size fits all. It's there's your award. We achieved it. Why did we achieve it? It's like you could have a gold, bottle of wine, wins an award, but it might be a Pinot Noir or a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Malbec.
Yeah. Could be a Lambrusco.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh God. Well, there we go. Super. Right. Thanks for that, Ben. Okay. Good. Anything exciting you're doing this weekend, Ben?
House hunting.
Oh, good. Oh, that is quite exciting.
Well, if it were,
it's not.
It's both exciting and frustrating in equal amounts.
Yeah. Okay. Always a compromise to be made somewhere. There we go. I am getting ready for Tintat London Market. That's the only thing on my agenda this weekend. So yes, that's it. So yeah, look forward to seeing everyone on Tuesdays coming along. We will no doubt give our reflections in next week's show. But thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.